Hi again. We're up to chapter 3 of the Bunjee venture by Stan McMurtry. Now, so far, can you see the time machine there on the front? So far, and that gives a clue to you as to what's going to happen. In this gorgeous old book, so far we've got, there's Mr. Winsborough with his pipe, and he's taken all these bits and bobs from around the house, and he's built himself a time machine, which sadly collapsed as he was going back 120 million years. But luckily, his children have got a lot of common sense, and they're going to try and rebuild it now. There they are, Andy and Karen with Mrs. Winsborough, and you can see, boy, can that woman knit. She doesn't know when to stop. And she's using it as a tissue at the moment, blowing her nose on it. Now then, chapter 3, here we go. The last thing they'd said was, Karen had said, "Heavens," said Karen after a while, "this is going to take at least a fortnight." Chapter 3. It took 4 months. During that time, every spare moment was spent welding, soldering, hammering. Another bread bin lid disappeared from the house. Another metal support to the carport was used. Carefully and meticulously, they followed their dad's plans, and gradually the second time machine took shape. Of course, Mrs. Winsborough had to tell the police about her husband disappearing, and long delays to the making of the time machine took place while 3 policemen came and looked over the garage. They were very suspicious and obviously didn't believe that Mr. Winsborough had just vanished into thin air. They said that they would continue with their inquiries, giving poor Mrs. Winsborough a very cold, hard stare, and they went away. Mr. Winsborough's employers had to be told too. He'd worked at the bank in the town as a cashier. Mr. Prentice, the bank manager, called round to the house with a large bunch of flowers and some letters from the rest of the staff, saying how sad they all were at the departing of a dear friend and colleague. Well, this really upset the Winsborough family terribly, and after Mr. Prentice had gone, there were even more tears, and now the 7-metre scarf became all soggy all over again. Well, eventually the day came when the last nut and bolt was fitted firmly into place. The children stood back and looked at their handiwork. "Doesn't look the same as the one that Dad built," said Karen dubiously, doubtfully. "That's only because we haven't painted it silver and we've used different bits and bobs here and there, but it should work the same way," said Andy. "And it looks different with 4 legs instead of only 1. I don't think we'd better tell Mum what we're doing, that we're going off to rescue Dad," said Karen. She was a bit upset, so upset about him and now we are all that she's got left, and she'd be worried sick if she thought there was a chance that the same could happen to us. "I'm worried sick it could happen to us too," said Andy. "Oh, you're not going to get all scared and give up after all our hard work," said Karen. "Don't be silly," said Andy, "but I must admit I am nervous. My tummy is full of butterflies." "Mine too," said Karen. "But come on, think. What are we going to do about Mum?" "We'll leave a note," said Andy. So they wrote a note which said, "Dear Mum, please don't be cross with us and try not to worry, but we have rebuilt Dad's time machine and we are going in it to rescue him. We don't know when we'll be back, but we will be all right. Please don't get all worried. We love you, Karen and Andy. P.S. We've got your bread bin lid." They pinned the note onto Mrs. Winsborough's knitting basket where she was sure to see it, then went into the kitchen and packed a large basket full of ham sandwiches, apples, a jar of peanut butter, which was Karen's favourite, a packet of Rice Krispies, Andy's favourite, a flask of tea, a bottle of lemonade. This was Karen's idea. Ever practical, she thought it wise to take plenty of provisions in case food was in short supply all those years ago, millions of years ago. They also took a torch, their mum's now 8-metre scarf in case it was cold, and Mr. Winsborough's pipe, his baccy, tobacco and matches, which they felt sure he would want if they managed to find him. Then, after a last longing look around the house, they climbed into the time machine. They pushed the little plugs into their ears, they pulled the studded seatbelt around their chests, and they clicked it into the socket into the wall. Andy adjusted the dials on the panel to the setting marked 120 million years. They then turned to his sister, his teeth chattering nervously, and said, "All set." "Are you sure we followed Daddy's plans carefully enough?" asked Karen. She too was slightly ashen-faced, and she chewed anxiously at her bottom lip. "I've checked every nut and screw," said Andy, "and I'm certain as I can be that we haven't missed anything out." "But what if I blow up like Daddy did? I tell you what, let's just phone up the police or the fire brigade. Tell them where Daddy is. Let them go and rescue him back 120 million years ago. I mean, after all, it is their job." Her heart was thumping painfully against her ribs now that the time for the off had come. She felt at that moment that she would rather be anywhere else on earth rather than stuck in this silly time contraption that might disintegrate at the touch of a button, blowing them both to kingdom come. Andy looked at her wide-eyed, and she turned her face away, ashamed and annoyed with herself for being babyish and trying to back down. She took a deep breath and turned back to face her brother. "Well, OK," said Andy. "I'll give the fire brigade a ring and we'll just—" "Push the switch," said Karen. "What? All right," said Andy. And he did. And then we're on to the end of chapter 3, chapter 4. Let's see if it worked. See you soon. Bye.